kids, Rio here. Welcome back to the channel. Today is Wednesday, so of course today is the next in my series of film reviews. This is a little something I came across recently and I really felt it was worth talking about. So we're going to talk about a film called Satanic, Hispanics. Now I realize the title sounds kind of rude, but it's actually not. This is an anthology film. If you're familiar with the idea, like say Tales from the Crypt, this is 5 stories that are done by Latino directors and writers with a wraparound story, like your Crypt Keeper type character that kind of leads you from one event to the next. I personally love anthologies. I think these are a lot of fun because if you don't like one segment, the next segment could be better. You know what I mean? So you have choices. A lot of ground to cover on this one. So here's what our wraparound story is. Let's start with that.
Why don't you fill me in?
27 dead bodies all shot in the head. And only one survivor.
Both call me be a hero.
What does that mean?
The traveler.
So our story is set in El Paso, Texas. And what we have happening is the police raid like some kind of warehouse or something. And they find just bodies and blood. And like we open right with that. Right? One guy still alive. And the one guy still alive refers to himself as El Viajero, or the Traveler. Okay, he is our Crypt Keeper. He is our storyteller. So of course he is being questioned by the cops about, well, what were you doing there? And he takes them from story to story as he's kind of explaining the things he's seen.
There are hours far darker than that, man. Forces far deadlier than I or you can even possibly comprehend.
So let's start there. Our character, El Viajero, or the Traveler, is being played by Efren Ramirez. You've seen him in a lot of stuff. He was in Robot Chicken. Who wasn't in Robot Chicken? He appeared in the series Constantine. And notably, he actually played Airman Diaz in the movie Lightyear. So you've seen him, you've heard him. You know who the guy is. So he is our principal character. He's our storyteller that takes us from one to the next. Now, our problem becomes with the directors, because I'm not 100% who directed which one. Okay? So we're just going to go through the list of the directors and things that notably I'm aware of that they have worked on. So we'll start with that.
There are portals back and forth from one realm to the other. Problem is sometimes the portals don't close once they're open.
So we have Alejandro Brujes, who was the director on Juan of the Dead, which I've seen that movie. I love it. If you haven't seen it, find it. It's really good. We have Mike Mendez, who was director for Big Ass Spider and La Valantula. Thank you, Asylum. Right? These are great movies. We have Gigi Saul Guerrero as our female director, which makes me very happy. I am not going to attempt to pronounce how this is said, but in Spanish, she is known as the Doll of Terror, I guess, for being a female director of horror films. I found a lot of Spanish language stuff that she's worked on, but nothing I've actually seen. But she did work on VHS 85, so she worked on one of the segments in that. We have, I don't know who this guy is, Eduardo Sanchez? Yeah, Blair Witch Project, right. And then lastly, we have Damien Rugma, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's done a lot of Spanish language horror shorts, so these guys are all pretty well known in like Spanish language horror, which, let's face it, I love, like Mexican and South American horror. They, like I've said before about Japanese and Chinese horror, like Asian horrors, these guys have a very different perspective, and I really enjoy it.
If I don't leave here within the next 90 minutes, we are all going to be dead.
We have 3 writers altogether, and interestingly enough, 2 of them, this is their first film they are credited with. And the other one has a few credits, some horror shorts, but nothing I'm familiar with. So, our writers are Pete Barnstrom, Alejandro Mendez, and Linz K. Vila. So I'm assuming that all the writing kind of went back and forth on the different segments. My best bet would be to tell you, if you see this movie, is just kind of freeze frame at the end credits. You'll probably get each one broken down. And I'm not going to try to go too much into each segment, right? Each of the anthology segments, only because it's a lot of ground to cover. What I will do is I'm going to talk about my favorite segment in the movie. My favorite segment in the movie is called El Vampiro. And as the title would suggest, it's about a vampire. Love it. So interestingly enough, the vampire was played by, if I'm pronouncing this right, Hamki Madeira. Pull your drinks out, kids, because it's time for another round of the drinking game. He appeared in The Mandalorian. Also Spider-Man Homecoming. He plays the main character, and then we have his partner. Her name is Mirabel. And Mirabel is played by Patricia Velasquez. You would know her from The Mummy. She played Anouk on the Moon. That's her. We have a couple cameos in this one as well, which kind of make me happy. One of them is that we have Michael C. Williams from the Blair Witch Project, who does kind of like a walkthrough, FYI. So I'm guessing probably Eduardo Sanchez probably directed this one. And actually, and here we go, the disclaimer about every time I review these films, there's a good chance someone I know is going to be in it. Yeah, because in El Vampiro, it's a friend of mine, Sam Wachowski, who has a cameo. I don't think he even has any lines. He's just kind of there. I've worked with him on a couple other projects. He actually appeared as a savior on The Walking Dead. He's doing quite well for himself. So, just FYI, there's my connection to the film. That and Eduardo. So. A lot of the stories play on, it's actually kind of a comedy, to be honest. Many of the wraparound segments with the Traveler are pretty solid and intense, very consistent. Each story in the anthology, some of them are funny, some of them are tragic. Most of them have a level of humor kind of going through it. So it's sort of a black comedy, which is cool. Interestingly enough, by the way, there is a cameo in one of the later anthologies where it's Jonah Ray, who I've mentioned before. He's in a segment called The Hammer of Xanthar. Just trust me on this one. A lot of these are based, from what I understand, a lot of these are kind of coming from sort of like Mexican, Latino, South American folklore. So a lot of these stories sort of are playing on more traditional stories for that region of the world, but then kind of adding the comedy and adding sort of the Western influences. So it's very interesting in that respect. Now, this is the part where I talk about the score, and I talk about the special effects. Too many names to even begin. It's literally just huge lists of people. And I can't work out who worked on what segment, who did what thing. Maybe a lot of them tagged off and worked on more than one. I don't know. Like I said, my recommendation would be you watch the movie and just freeze frame through the credits, because I'm sure they're probably broken down in the credits by segment. But you can look up all of these names on their IMDb. So you can actually see if there's any names you recognize, any films, any projects they've done that you've seen. But there's a lot of people that worked on this. So I feel like this project probably was done over a very long period of time. Because I worked on VHS 2. I worked on the segment called POV. And one of the things that I found is that each segment was shot over weeks or months in different parts of the world and then assembled. So I'm guessing this one probably did similar. I suppose one thing I should probably mention, of course, is if you do not speak Spanish, that is okay. If the characters are speaking Spanish, they don't all throughout the movie, but some characters do. There are subtitles for anyone who is not a Spanish speaker, so you won't get left behind in the story. Most of it is in English, so don't let language be a barrier to watching this film. So rating system. Honestly, I'm gonna give this a good solid 4. Like I said, I love an anthology film. And I love that some of these people, this is like their first project they've ever worked on. And in other cases, it's people that we know their work. So it's an interesting kind of mix of, truly experienced and new guys coming in. I like the fact that one of the segments was directed by a female director who apparently has quite the reputation as a horror director, so good for her. It's a hard industry for women to get into, much less as directors. Not hard, very hard to get taken seriously. So, good for her. I definitely recommend this film. This film was a lot of fun to watch. And because it's an anthology, like I said, it kind of goes from thing to thing. Just remember to keep in mind, this is essentially a black comedy. So don't expect to be, biting your nails and terrified. That's not necessarily what this movie's about. But it does run the range of emotions from story to story. So that makes it rather fascinating to me. Okay, well, I guess that's it for this week. There's a subscribe button over here someplace. You can hit that button, get notifications of when all my new stuff goes up. Whatever things happen on this channel, because on this channel, you never know what the heck's going to happen on this channel. So, hopefully, you'll join me for the ride of weirdness. All right, kids, that's it for me for this time. I'll see you next week. Later.